Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome in, everybody. It is a hump day here on Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. Glad to welcome back Jad Chambers off a fresh vacation, sitting there with his sun-baked skin, just living life easy. We don't know what Jad did on his vacation, but we're going to pretend he went to some resort somewhere in another country and really kicked up his feet and enjoyed it. We'll have lots of giveaways with Jad back. So that's good news for you on that IHOP hotline, 869-1240. So here's what's coming today. We will give away more Wonka tickets. That sneak peek is tomorrow. We'll give away tickets to Illuminations at Botanica. We'll give away tickets to Turnpike Troubadours. How about that one? And we'll give away some HTO. So we got lots to come for you. Keep it here. Keep it handy. We will get into more of the Kansas City Chiefs and what they need to do as we continue to sort of, dissect another loss and what it means to the future. Other NFL news, I think that's interesting. We got a pretty juicy rumor about Bill Belichick yesterday that we're trying to figure out if there's any truth to it. Royals fans, the Royals make a significant free agent move. And look, as much as we dogged them last year for not doing anything, I got to give them a lot of credit. Seth Lugo, now Royal, and another reliever, Chris Stratton. So we'll get into that a little bit later in the show as well. Quarterback injury news, all kinds of good stuff. Kind of a smattering today as we are, as of right now, guest-free. I do want to point out, in addition to our regular guest tomorrow, Chelsea Messenger to talk some betting, Tim Fitzgerald to talk K-State, we'll have Wichita State basketball player Harlan Beverly on. Our first chance to talk to one of the players. We'll try and do that more often now that things are settling down in the football front. So looking forward to that conversation, our first with Harlan Beverly. That'll come tomorrow for you as well. Tommy, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. You're going through the list of everything we're giving away today, and you're kind of like Santa Claus on the show today, just, giving away
Jad
gifts
is like Santa
left
Claus.
and right.
Let's be perfectly clear. It's Jad that is in complete control and keeps our organized chaos of these giveaways together. I love the fact that we're able to give stuff away. I think one of the beauties of local radio that has existed for all time and eternity is giveaways. Like, who doesn't get excited and nostalgic about the chance to call into the local radio and win something like that? That's been a great and crazy and fun thing for all time, at least in my life. So it's as much nostalgia as anything. I love that we can do that here on the air. And if you ever want to look for ways to do that and partner with us, you can get in touch with Tommy. You can do that, and we'll try to make that happen. 869-1240 is that IHOP hotline. Glad to have everybody with us today on this Wednesday. Jason's chiming in right out of the gates that he's craving Chiefs football to play better and hibachi from a Blackstone. Now, Tommy, our conversation the other day was effective for you, I suppose, where we talked about forgetting anniversaries and, messing up presents and our wives never. Your wife felt so guilty that she went and bought you something. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah. So last week, if you recall, we talked about, it was actually your anniversary, right? And you talked about how
I'm glad you got a nice present for my anniversary.
Exactly. You and your wife, didn't give each other gifts. And we were talking about how once you're married and you've got kids, you don't really, give gifts as much as you used to your spouse. My wife heard that segment, felt bad about it, and got me a Christmas gift. But in typical Morgan fashion, she couldn't wait until Christmas to tell me. Like, she had 3 hours where she bought the gift and then couldn't wait to tell me. So she got me a Blackstone, which I'm really excited about. But now she's expecting hibachi, and she's expecting me to be this chef out on the Blackstone basically every night for dinner. So I understand why she got it for me. It's a gift for me, but it's also so I can take over dinner responsibilities.
I'm really happy for you that you got a Blackstone for my anniversary. That's very sweet.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because otherwise I wouldn't have gotten a Christmas gift.
I want a Blackstone. I would already have one but I can't decide at some point at my house, I've got these aspirations of these cool things, and I want to do some sort of outside cooking station, right? With
Yeah.
a grill and a black, like built into something. So I can't pull the trigger because I'm like, well, if I do that, I can't just get one that's, so I've always been on the fence, but I want one. And I think, look, I haven't had one before, but I feel like I would be out there, flipping pancakes, making breakfast, or hibachi, like
Tossing
all the
shrimp
time.
in your
Yep.
kids' mouths. And,
Just throwing shrimp at everybody.
I posted about it last night on Twitter, and we had like several listeners. Jason was one of them, chiming in about, oh, I'll bring the sake and, I'll bring the rice. And I'm like, guys, I'm not inviting people over for hibachi. I don't even know how to
Yes,
make,
you are.
I don't even know how to
You
make
can't-
hibachi. I have the Blackstone, but I don't know how to make anything.
Here's the social media rule I'll make up on the spot. You can't do food pics, and not that you posted a picture, but you can't do that stuff. That is an open invitation. Like it becomes an open invitation because that's the way it is. And by the way, on sake, it's got to be hot sake. Like, have you ever had cold sake? It's not very good.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Not great.
Hot sake is one of my very favorite things in the world. Cold sake is not good at all. In my humble opinion.
Yeah, so we put the Blackstone together last night, got it all set up and everything, is good to go. We get done, and within an hour, my wife is on her phone and she's watching Blackstone recipe videos. Like, what are you making us tomorrow night? I'm like, honey, we just set it up today. Like, let's let it breathe for a second.
So it's like if you would buy your wife a vacuum cleaner, right? Like hint. Like, yeah, I got it.
That's dangerous, though. I would never do that. Like, let's be real.
I think a vacuum cleaner is a great present, and I would never do it unwarranted, right? I would never just like, here's surprise, it's a new mop. But when you get older, when you get older, like sometimes a vacuum cleaner is a big deal. It's like, oh man, check out this new vacuum cleaner.
The only vacuum cleaner that I would feel comfortable giving as a gift is one of the Roomba ones. Because then it's like, honey, I'm not asking you to do anything. This is going to make your life easier and clean up, and nobody has to do anything but the vacuum.
Can we get a robot that does the dishes? Like, I feel like with 3 kids, like it's just one. Dishes and laundry are this never ending death loop of like, it never ends. Like there is constantly a cycle of clothes and dishes needing to be, done or put away or folded and put away. It never ends. Like it's nonstop. Why don't we have robots for that? Like you vacuum once a week? I don't know how often you vacuum. I hope that doesn't gross anybody out. I have no idea. I've never been a big vacuumer, but however often you vacuum, I don't know. That's not one of the things that I do.
It's called hiring
this other stuff.
Hiring a housekeeper.
We have a very kind woman that comes like once every 6 weeks, but that's once every 6 weeks, and she doesn't do laundry or dishes because I would never ask her to do that. Right? So the other stuff is fine.
Not? But
I don't know how to beat that cycle because you have to do them every day. Great. Do it once every six weeks or whatever. I just like that drives me nuts. And like the endless clutter drives me nuts. Now we have this discussion all the time. I'm like, we have too much crap all over our counters and everywhere. Now we're also running 2 businesses and everything's just sort of organized chaos all the time in our lives. But that drives me nuts too. My wife insists that everyone's house looks that way and they just put it away before people come over. And I'm like, I don't know that that's true. I don't know that I believe that everyone is just like got clutter everywhere all over their things. I don't know if that's true, but it's fine. That's the other thing that drives me nuts.
Go ahead, Jed.
I was just going to say the cleaning robot that I came up with an idea for a different type of cleaning robot. The idea was I had it right as the very first time this year that I turned on the heater in my apartment. All the built up detritus up there in the all blew out, and I was just thinking to myself, why doesn't somebody make a Roomba like robot for their air ventilation system? So before you turn it on,
in there,
you just throw that little robot in there, and he cleans it all out. And then I had the brilliant product name for it. So the product would just make me a billionaire almost instantly, because I was going to call it Tron McClane.
Oh, on the vents. I like that. The vents. The only problem with that, we all have these billion-dollar ideas, but we're not engineers, and we can't, actually execute the plan. And that's the problem there.
Well, if somebody's into robotics, they can share my billion with me, and we can design it.
I want to give Jad some credit here because that's a great segue into Die Hard absolutely is a Christmas movie. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, for sure.
you know,
we
like
don't need
that-
to have that discussion.
no, but I'm
Yes,
just saying,
it's
like, that's a
Christmas
really
movie.
good segue back to the Christmas season and the gift giving and all of that.
Die Hard not being a Christmas movie would be like would be saying Home Alone is not a Christmas movie, and Home Alone is the greatest Christmas movie of all time. So yeah, like I don't understand how that ever sort of like got in the way. It's
I think
a movie
there's an
based around
argument.
Christmas time.
There's an argument to be made that the movie The Santa Claus is not a Christmas movie because the majority of the movie doesn't take place around Christmas. It takes
Is that
place
the
throughout
Tim
the
Allen
entire
one?
yeah, it takes place
Yeah.
throughout the entire year. The beginning and the end
Yeah,
are
I mean, look,
Christmas,
he's
but nothing in the
that's
middle.
a Christmas movie. They're all Christmas movies. If you watch them around Christmas time, they're a Christmas movie, right? It's pretty simple. We watched one the other day that I guess I had never seen with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad.
Oh, Jingle All the
Um,
Way. It's a classic.
Yeah.
It's one of the best ones
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, you know, we
Phil
were told
Hartman,
that
it's great.
I love Phil Hartman. We were told that by the internet. And I don't know that I agree that it's one of the best ever. It was fine to watch with my little kids, but that was pretty next level cheese. And I know Arnold Schwarzenegger's in a lot of cheesy movies, and I love most of those. I'm going to say I felt a little misled on how good that movie was.
Best
It was
line.
fine.
Best line of the entire movie. Phil Hartman on the phone with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh, these cookies. And then Arnold goes, put the cookie down now.
Yeah, that was the
best line. Best line of the
Best
entire
line.
movie.
I agree. But you know, whatever. As an aside, robot thing. One final thought. I'm terrified of AI and robots and what they're going to do to us because you know I've seen that movie 1,000 times. I'm pretty excited about like the Jetsons, like robot clean my house and tidy things up for me, like that. I'm going to welcome that. And then, you know, I guess full well knowing that that robot will eventually turn against us and enslave us and do all the things that we've seen again on every sci-fi movie for the last, I don't know, 50 years. But anyway, as we move along here on Sports Daily.
Wait a minute. One quick chime in because I've got a great idea for Tommy.
Okay.
Yeah. Tommy, you're kind of reluctant to get started on this whole Blackstone thing because you really don't know how to use it just yet.
Right.
Something that you can tell your wife is that it's going to take a while to properly season the Blackstone before and you can look into how to do that. And I think it's probably already done, to be completely honest. But if she doesn't know that, then you can say, well, I'm going to have to use it several times just to season it properly. So
Yeah,
are you suggesting that Tommy lied to his wife, Chad?
well, yeah, unless she's listening to this segment, in which no, I wouldn't
easy.
do that. Yeah.
My wife was already 2 steps ahead of me, sending me videos of how to season it, and so she already knows, and it's already done and taken care of. The thing is, I've learned, like in marriage, and Jacob, I don't know if your wife is this way, but as soon as I think I've got her outsmarted, like she's a couple steps ahead of me every single time. There's really nothing I can do. So I guess I'm gonna have to figure out. First off, I got to figure out how to cook hibachi for her. And then I guess I've got to figure out how to cook hibachi for the listeners. That's going to take a while, though.
Jason and there were a couple others there. We'll be there cheering you on, having hot sake, and you know, and catching shrimp as you fling them across the room. So it'll be fun. It'll be a great time. We're all looking forward to it. Can't wait for that. All right, we're going to go into this Bill Belichick rumor when we come back. On the way out here, as we've had a little fun here in the opening segment, let's continue the festivities with a giveaway, kind of talking about Christmas and Christmas movies and what we do, Christmas presents. How about a Christmas tradition for a lot of people, Illuminations at Botanica? More than 2 million lights. Illuminations has been ranked among the top 10 in light shows across the country. Don't miss the 62-foot Christmas tree and Botanica's new Candyland Storybook Gingerbread House. Pair of tickets for you right now on the High Op Hotline, 869-1240. Chad will get us a winner. We'll come back. Is Bill Belichick done with the Patriots after this year? Some say yes. We'll dig in after this.
stretch.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Enjoy Illuminations on Us, Matt. And we'll give away a lot of stuff today, so stay tuned on that IHOP hotline, 869-1240. By the way, Wildcat fans, check out Go Powercat's PowerCat podcast, the latest bowl and transfer portal news, as well as men's and women's basketball all season long. You can follow PowerCat podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll have Tim Fitzgerald of Go Powercat on tomorrow to talk K-State. Today, let's start with Bill Belichick, Tommy, because you've got a guy who not too long ago was relatively universally considered the GOAT of coaches, alongside the GOAT, Tom Brady. But since Brady's been gone, that whole chicken and egg conversation of which guy was more responsible seems much clearer now than it used to. Not that Bill Belichick's not still an all-timer. He still may be the best coach of all time. I think when you look at, in-game adjustments and the way that they were able to maintain that dynasty of which he was the, chief executive for a long, long time, I don't want to take any of that away from him. I'm not going to, but it has not gone well since. He can't figure out how to, get any sort of offense going now in the wake of Tom Brady leaving. And it seems like things are unraveling a bit. His worst season in New England, and then the report yesterday. Tom Curran of NBC Sports Boston and a couple other places have reported now that Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, has already decided that he's moving on from Belichick after this season and made that decision back in November when the Patriots lost a game 10-6 to the Colts. It's interesting that we're seeing that report from a couple places. I think there's been enough smoke that it makes some sense here, that there's a fire and that they're just trying to ride this thing out. But strange ending, I guess, in this league, though, not all that surprising.
The first thing I want to say about the Bill Belichick situation is that it's really not his fault that Mac Jones is a garbage can dressed up like a football player. That's not really his fault. Right? Like, it's really not.
I think he's had something to do with it. You had a young quarterback who was really good his rookie year, and then you give him Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator, right? You've never instilled an ounce of confidence in him that he's, going to be good in the starter. I'm not saying that Mac Jones is one or the other, but I am saying Mac Jones looked real good his rookie year, real good, and then was just alienated, it felt like, from afar at every turn since that first year. So I think he does have something to do with the downfall of Mac Jones, just because we saw much more out of him right when he came into the league. He looked like he was going to be pretty good. He looked like Tom Brady.
I think the thing about Belichick, too, that we have to understand is that, I hate this conversation about who was better or who led to the dynasty. Was it Brady or Belichick? It was both of them. To an extent. I mean, that marriage worked to, great levels. It wasn't one or the other. Both things can be true. And it's absolutely true that after Brady left and went to Tampa Bay and then subsequently retired, that things have not gone well overall for the Patriots. They've not been able to really settle on a starting quarterback ever since Brady left. I mean, remember the Cam Newton year, and then Mac Jones and now Bailey Zappi and all. Like, they haven't had any kind of consistency at that position or at the offensive coordinator position. You look at the skill players around the quarterback, it's not really there. They bring in Ezekiel Elliott to back up Ramondre Stevenson, and it's been, I think, middle of the road at best with that situation. There really aren't dynamic wide receivers. There really never have been in New England. So, I mean, I get it. I understand why Robert Kraft looks at what's going on right now and then compares it to what the past 20 years had been. And he thinks, okay, this is not acceptable. I know that he talked to Rich Eisen before the Colts game a few weeks ago and said he'd never had a record like that before. At the time they were 2-7. He had never been 2-7. He'd never been 2-10. Now they're 3-10. I mean, even if they win out their final 4 games of the year, you can look at this season as a disaster, right? You can kind of look at it that way. So, I mean, I understand why Robert Kraft, if he makes that decision, wants to move on. I just hope that Bill Belichick is remembered by the good things and not what's happened this year and the year before.
He will be. He will be. He'll be remembered for all his quirkiness and like all that stuff. And obviously the wins and the most Super Bowls and all those things. He'll absolutely be remembered for that. I think the problem for Robert Kraft, and he feels an obligation to the fans, and I honestly have some respect for this. It's not like there is absolutely zero indication that it's getting better. It's getting worse. It's getting definitively worse, and it has been. And some of the reasons for that do seem self-inflicted, whether it's Belichick, not helping the quarterbacks at all and really just sort of, pulling the rug out from underneath them at times, whether it's not knowing how to get, an assistant in there that's not just a retread of one of his old guys who are not finding success. Like, as both an executive of that team and as now the head coach, I don't want to say the game has passed him up. That is wildly inaccurate and way too speculative. But this fit has probably run its course now. I mean, it's as simple as, do you think Bill Belichick's ever winning another Super Bowl with the Patriots?
No.
Of course he's not.
Nope.
No. So, I get it, and I respect Kraft for feeling an obligation to the fans to make that change, even with somebody, I'm sure, whether they're buddies or not, they have a tremendous amount of respect for each other and everything. I do think, though, when we go back to the Brady thing, it is important to remember, if anybody ever tries to have that conversation again, that it's always the players that are more important. Always. It's why they make more money, number one, first and foremost. And it just is. Like, Andy Reid never was able to get the Super Bowl one until he got Patrick Mahomes. Okay. And he had some great teams and really good quarterbacks along the way. So it's always got to take everything involved to get one. But if we're wondering who's more it's always the player. That answer is always the player.
I understand what you're saying. I agree with you. And I think that, to your point about Robert Kraft feeling a responsibility to the fan base to move on from Belichick and find a coach that can bring them another championship, that makes sense. At the same time, I also fully understand Bill Belichick's desire to maybe go to another team for a couple more years before he retires, a team that would be closer to the Super Bowl than what the Patriots are. Like, think of a team, the first team that comes to mind are the Chargers, a team that has a lot of talent, but they're mismanaged. And that they're not, they're not performing up to the best of their abilities with Brandon Staley. I mean, if I'm the ownership of the Chargers, wouldn't I want to move on from Brandon Staley and bring in a guy like Bill Belichick if he's available?
No, absolutely not. Would I want to bring in Belichick?
Yeah.
Zero chance I'd bring in Belichick. No way.
Why?
Number one, he's a defensive coach, and they've tried that now with Anthony Lynn and Brandon Staley. As much as I would say Dan Quinn's the best coach on the market, I don't think that they can afford to do that again. They have got to get somebody that will highlight Justin Herbert, not Anthony Lynn, not Brandon Staley. It needs to be a coach with coaching experience that can manage an in-game situation,
Belichick,
and B, an offensive-minded coach.
I think Belichick can do that.
After watching this Mac Jones fiasco, I don't want Belichick within 10,000 miles of my young quarterback.
You don't think that Bill Belichick can manage the Chargers in a better way than Brandon Staley has?
In game, yes, of course he can. As an executive, what has he done lately that gives you any confidence he's capable with a roster? They haven't drafted well, particularly. They've had a couple of good picks. They don't have any talent there. Who's their best offensive player? Ramondre Stevenson, probably.
Probably.
Who then? Who's next?
One of their tight ends, Hunter Henry, maybe is maybe
a nice secondary free agent pickup. Like, they have been just totally inadequate in all of it over the last 2 or 3 years. There's no chance that I would want Belichick there.
Any team in the NFL that has a roster that is talented, but maybe being mismanaged in a certain way, would be wise, if Belichick separates from New England after the year, to reach out to him about coming over. And for Belichick, I would want to do that, because if a team has a lot of talent, but they're not coming together in a way, to win a championship, that's going to be more likely for him to win a championship before he retires with another team than with the Patriots.
There's been one team that has, when I saw this, like perked my ear a little bit for a wide variety of reasons. Okay. One, there's the stick it to you factor. Two, it's an organization wild enough to do something like it. And three, you're not going to alienate the quarterback situation next year, and that's the Jets. So I don't know that the Jets are going to move on from Robert Saleh. In fact, I don't think they should. But if they did, and you want to talk about like the ultimate storyline, headline, like that would be one of the only spots where I think he could come in and not be disruptive. God, I feel like I'm piling on Belichick, and I don't want it to be that, because I do think he's one of the all-timers, but he's much older now, and I just don't know if I can picture him sort of starting over somewhere at this point, because he's going to need time. He's shown us that with time, it's not going well. It's going the opposite of well with the Patriots right now.
I can't imagine.
The Jets would be okay with Rodgers, because he's not going to mess up Rodgers,
I can't
right?
imagine with the way that Belichick 30 years ago walked out on the Jets after one day on the job. That they would go back to him.
But it adds to that storyline, though. Like,
can you
was Woody
imagine
Johnson? Did he own them then?
Can you imagine the collective outrage from the fan base if Belichick walks in the door after snubbing
for the
them?
Jets? Oh, they'd love it.
No, he walked out on them a day after being named the head coach after
30 years
Parcells.
ago.
And
These guys don't care.
And then goes to New England and has a 25 years of success. Sure, if I'm a
I don't
Jets
know what
fan,
the Jets are going to do. I would stick with Saleh. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if was Woody Johnson the owner when that happened.
I don't know.
I think the Jets would welcome anything they think will help them win. Right? I don't. But either way, I think Belichick would be, if he just can't step away, maybe more inclined to go be a part of a staff for one of his old guys, just to maybe enjoy it a little bit, because I would imagine that what he's doing right now is not very enjoyable. I do think he's still a brilliant tactician. Look at what they did to the Steelers as an example of how just his game planning can totally disrupt the opposition, right? I still think that that's in his repertoire for sure. But could you imagine, he's been the highest paid guy forever. He's getting older. Don't you think it would be fun to just kind of step aside and go like join Dable's staff, or, one of his old guys, and just be like, you know what? I'm here to help. I'm here to help. I'm going to come up with an excellent defensive game plan for you. I'm sitting back. If you need advice, I'll give it to you. I'm sick of doing these press conferences. This will be fun. I don't know. It's hard because his advanced age, he doesn't look it. He doesn't look to me as old as some of the old guys in this league, but he's pretty old. I mean, he's right. Is he as old as Pete Carroll? I think he's right behind Pete Carroll.
I think he's right. He's 71.
71. So he's older than Andy Reid, not quite as old as Pete Carroll, I don't think. And Pete Carroll, of course, doesn't look old at all.
And by the way,
doesn't look old. He's just feeling it.
I looked it up. Woody Johnson did not own the Jets. He came in a year after that.
They don't care then. Like, Woody Johnson doesn't care. I don't think he's going to be a head coach in the league next year. I think it would have to be a team that is desperate, very close, and has like a quarterback situation where you're not going to potentially disrupt any development of a quarterback. Like, he's not going to mess with anything with the Jets. He might bring in a better backup quarterback which would make some sense. But I
also saw a rumor that he might be interested in coaching Navy next year. I mean, he was on
that would be sick.
He was on College Game Day before the Army Navy game. His father was an assistant football coach at Navy, and he was raised in Annapolis, Maryland. So he's very familiar.
That would be awesome.
It's obviously why he was on set for College Game Day.
Let's just do that. That would be awesome. That would be so cool. That's what I mean. Like, I just don't know. Like, if you're Belichick, like, why would you even just don't even mess with it. Like, and I know he's a lifer and he's really good at it. But man, at 71, like, go enjoy something. And I think he could enjoy life as an assistant coach.
Do you think
Bill
Belichick enjoys anything? Just why? Like other than football,
absolutely.
other than coaching
He is
football,
totally.
what does he
He
enjoy?
has been the ultimate media troll. He just trolls people. I think he loves every second of it. Listen to his
He
former
enjoys
players
that,
talk about
But
him.
you just said like maybe he wants to like retire and go enjoy something. Like outside of football, what is it?
Oh,
what do you
outside
think he
of football?
What do you think he enjoys? He probably
He
enjoys
does.
nothing.
We know he's a music guy. He's a Taylor Swift fan. We've learned that. Like
Okay.
I think he enjoys life more than people think he does. I think he's just been messing with the media for so long. Everyone thinks he's this miserable grouch. I don't think he's that at all outside of a press conference. I think he's actually, boy, delightful is not the right word. But when you hear his former players talk about him, that's the vibe you get. Like people, I think, really enjoy being around him. He's been a cutthroat executive in the NFL as far as like roster decisions, but you have to be. You have to do that as respectfully as you can, or you'll never survive it. But Andy Reid's also, however much input he has with Brett Veach, a pretty cutthroat executive too. The Chiefs have no issue. So I think you can enjoy things. I just think he's put on such a good facade over the years with the media of being this miserable person. I don't think he is that at all.
So I'm reading his Wikipedia page right now, which I obviously is the Bible for facts about somebody. Really, the only thing I can find about him that is outside of football. Did you know he's a fan of the rock band Bon Jovi?
I did know that. Yeah, I did know they were kind of buddies a little bit. I think.
So he could.
I think he's a music.
He
guy.
could be a Bon Jovi groupie.
He's got that dog that showed up, right? He's a dog guy.
He's got a dog, and he likes Bon Jovi. The guy's set for life.
Just travel the country and go to concerts. I don't know, maybe not, or go be an assistant coach with somebody and try and help out one of your old assistants. That seems more likely to me. We'll see. We got to see if these rumors are even true. But it was inevitable. It was inevitable when Brady left. This was going to happen, and here it is. And I don't think it should take anything away from his legacy. I don't think it will. I do think the interesting part is there was so much about who was it, Brady or Belichick. I'm with you. The reality was both, but I'm also 100% of the time when you're having that conversation, it's the player, and especially when it's quarterback.
I remember thinking it at the time when the marriage broke up and Brady went to Tampa Bay. I thought, you know what? If Belichick was smart, he would leave too at the same time and just leave those questions open-ended forever. But I think that in Belichick's mind, he thought, I want to prove that,
for sure,
I can do it without Brady. And it hasn't happened that way. I don't know if it's going to, hurt his legacy, but I do think that you have to include it when you're talking about his legacy. The smart thing in my mind, in retrospect, he should have left when Brady left and they could have just like rode off in the sunset together.
Yeah, he was never going to do that. Never going to do that.
Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine, and maybe he's not done. I don't know, but it's interesting. And the Patriots
97.5,
and they'll play the Chiefs this weekend, and they could come up with some game plan that has us pulling our hair out. I mean, that's still he can still do that occasionally. That's the only thing that has you like this weekend. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll get into that throughout the week here. All right, let's do another giveaway here on the IHOP hotline. Let's do HTO on this one. We still have Turnpike Troubadour tickets. We still have more Wonka tickets, but let's give away some coffee from the HTO Brew House. You can get it iced. You can get it hot. All kinds of creations for you. And you can get it at Wichita's East location or in Derby. Chad will give a couple of those away right now to the first caller on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. Good luck, everybody. We'll be right back with more Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily. Congratulations to Wendell for winning the HDO Brewhouse coffee. Maybe a horchata, maybe a cinnamon honey macchiato, or if you're like me, just a plain old black coffee. It's all good. Good luck. Congratulations, and good luck to all our listeners here in the future as we give away more stuff throughout the rest of the program here today. That includes Turnpike Troubadour tickets. That includes Wonka movie tickets. Stick around on that IHOP hotline. Tommy, well, let's begin it with the Royals here, and maybe this goes through. I love the signing. I think for a lot of reasons. One, I think Seth Lugo is better than what they've got in the rotation, so that makes it easy. Seth Lugo, by the way, who had been, a reliever most of his career, last year for the Padres threw just under 150 innings and stuck right around his career ERA, which has been about a 3.5. His whip wasn't amazing, but it's a pitcher that upgrades their rotation. And they spent relatively big money on him, 3 years and $45 million. We asked for signals that the ownership was going to do things to try to win. You got a real kick to the stomach on the draft lottery, but this is good to see, a good start. And they added Chris Stratton, who's fine. Like he's a fine reliever that will also upgrade their roster. But 2 moves yesterday that should upgrade things nicely.
The one good thing about Seth Lugo, and probably the reason why the Royals paid what they did for him, is because he's pretty versatile. And you mentioned it, like he had been a reliever, but then he was a starter last year for the Padres. He can do a lot of different things. If you need him to be a starter in the rotation, he can do that. If you need him to come out of the bullpen, he can do that. If you want him to pitch, as an opener, or first, 1 or 2 innings in a game, he can do that too. So I think that that's part of the appeal for a guy like Seth Lugo, is that he's not firm in one area. He can do a lot of different things. You mentioned Chris Stratton, they signed him. You also didn't mention Will Smith is now back, in the Royals in their
for a
bullpen.
reason. For a reason.
Look, I
watched
it.
a lot of Will Smith last year.
I get it.
He's
but
like 64 years old.
He's not that old. He's not that old. The thing about Will Smith is that he can be a decent setup guy, I think. He's not going to be your closer by any means, but he can be a decent setup guy, and he's a winner. He's a winner. He is
a winner. He's been on the last
three World Series champions, the Rangers, the Astros, and the Braves, pitching for them. And I know he's getting older, but he started his career with the Royals.
He's not. He's like the same age as Lugo.
I think he's
like,
I think he can be.
I'm being facetious.
He can be an okay piece, I think, in that bullpen.
He can be. The Rangers were asking. He really, honestly, I'm wild. I'm kidding completely on Will Smith. I like the Will Smith signing just fine. He was asked to do way too much because he had to be in what was one of the worst bullpens in baseball last year. They had him trying to close games, and he just doesn't have that kind of stuff anymore. But as a lefty and somebody with that kind of experience, you want him in the room 100%. I like the move. It's a move, right? You add Stratton and Will Smith to the bullpen. That's 2 pieces of a World Series winning bullpen, albeit they were far down the rung of anybody that mattered when it counted for the Rangers. The experience is fine. The Lugo signing, though, is a totally different stratosphere for the Royals. When you go and get, a pitcher like Lugo that a lot of teams would have wanted, and you pay up to get him, that's how you let people know you're trying to win more. Bobby Witt Jr. tweeted a picture of a brick. Now, I'm not the best at deciphering social media, when people are being passive aggressive or not just saying what they directly mean, but I'm going to guess that brick from Bobby Witt Jr. means just a brick to build with, right? And it has something to do with these free agent signings. I would much rather see the Royals spend bigger and take risks on starting pitching than I would retread bats. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't want that. They need to add to the offense. There's no question. They've been really good at identifying cheaper alternatives offensively. And say what you will, but they have done a good job at that. So I'd much rather see them spend aggressively in an area they haven't done well at historically, and that's in their starting rotation. So that's why I like to see that. I think they can find bats a little bit more on the cheap, but if you're going to get starting pitching in today's baseball, you have to spend to get it, and they did. And I applaud them for doing that.
And I don't know if the signing of Lugo means that they're out of the hunt for guys like Marcus Stroman and Lucas Giolito. They've been interested in those free agents as well, according to CBS. But right now, you look at their rotation. You've got Cole Reagans, Brady Singer, Jordan Lyles, and now Seth Lugo. So you do have another spot. I think it's unlikely. I read a report that Zach Greinke is preparing to play in 2024.
Good.
I think it's unlikely that he's going to be a Royal, though. So I wonder if they are still in the hunt for guys like Stroman and Giolito, who they've been.
Well, that would be a different signal from ownership, right? That would be we want a new stadium, and we're gonna here we go, fans. Like, we're asking a lot of you, and we're asking a lot. Here's our commitment. Let's get one of these guys. I don't know that I think it's fiscally smart. Maybe Giolito, probably not Stroman. I'd have to see the price tag. I think those guys get a tad overvalued in the market currently. For a team like the Royals to take that kind of a swing, I'd much rather prefer 3 more Lugo type signings, right, to go into the rotation. Lyles was objectively terrible, and they gave him $11 million, so they tried it there. Like, if they're in the market for some of these guys, that's awesome. But that I still, and we've always cautioned this, that it doesn't make sense for them to also just wildly throw money at players that are good. That's not going to ever be the ticket for them. We look at the Rays, like mid-level, nice, frugal type signings. Use all your money to make sure Bobby Witt Jr. gets locked up, right? That's where you spend big money.
And we haven't talked about it a whole lot because other things have been coming up, but they did make another trade with the Braves. They brought in Nick Anderson, so another bullpen piece. They brought in Kyle Wright, who, when he was healthy, he was a good starter for the Braves. He's dealing with some injuries. I don't know if he'll be able to come back for the Royals or not, but they're going to at least give that a try. The thing is like, I feel like JJ Piccolo understands the pitching problems in Kansas City, and that's where it's got to be fixed, not just for next year, but moving forward. And if Seth Lugo can be, a key part of that rotation, they signed him to a 3-year deal. They're hoping he can be here for a while and try to build up that rotation in a better way. They've already got Cole Reagans, he was great last year. Now they've got some other pieces, I think, to work with.
They did a really nice job in the Reagans deal. Piccolo's done. Look, I know that we wanted to give him Piccolo has done some things where I'm like, okay. Like the Reagans trade was fantastic. And it was good for the Rangers too, don't get me wrong, but it was fantastic. Now you make these moves. He's clearly infusing the money into the bullpen. And now Lugo. If you're going to spend big, though, no Stroman, no Giolito for me. Lock up Bobby Witt Jr. I'd rather see the big money spent that way, but I'm not gonna whine if they go get a big time free agent pitcher. But
I would love a rotation for the Royals that was either Stroman or Giolito, Seth Lugo, Cole Reagans, Jordan Lyles, maybe if he's better this year, and Brady Singer.
Brady Singer and anybody
else. That's a really good rotation, I think.
It's for the AL Central. Yeah. Heck yeah, you can win with that rotation if the offense gets back healthy. All right, let's take a quick break. Royals fans, if you want to chime in, and we haven't talked a lot about it, but they are making moves, and we are paying attention. It's all been about Shohei. 869-1240, you can do that with us. I want to get into the MVP conversation in the NFL as we get some updating a little bit on Tyreek Hill's injury. I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite. I think there's a chance we get a non-quarterback MVP this year. We'll get into that. Is it Tyreek Hill? We can do that. We've got giveaways to come as well. Stick with us, everybody. Having some fun on a midweek edition here. We'll be right back.
Laugh Out Loud Mornings with Bob and Tom on 97.5 and 1240 KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Hour number 2 here on Sports Daily. You can get to the program on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. We've given away some HTO coffee. We've given away some Illuminations at Botanica tickets. We'll have Wonka tickets, the movie, a sneak peek tomorrow night. And we'll give away some Turnpike Troubadours tickets, probably the most high profile of these giveaways. I know there's a lot of Turnpike fans out there. They're coming to Trust Bank Arena. Not till May, but we can get you set up and hooked up here right out of the gates. Tommy Castor alongside me here. Jacob Albracht, Jad Chambers back producing for us in studio there. Glad to have Jad back. Let's talk MVP in the NFL, Tommy. I think most people right now have it as a race between Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill has overtaken Tua. I think it's far more likely if both of those players end well that it would be Tyreek that would be the leader in the clubhouse over Tua. I think we got a quick look at what the Dolphins are without Tyreek Hill in that game where he left in the first quarter and then returned against the Titans. Tyreek Hill, what he's doing, when I think about MVP, the reason it always goes to quarterback, right, is because you try to think about replacement value and what is the replacement value of that player. I don't know that there is, I can't remember a year. And Christian McCaffrey's had some of those years with San Francisco. He may be having one right now. Tyreek Hill is just out of this world right now. And you can't always see it from a receiver like on every play, but you can kind of see his impact on every play he's out there for the Dolphins.
That's the way that it's always been with Tyreek Hill, right? Like he impacts so many other different things going on in every single play. Even if it's not designed for him, he's going to attract all this attention. He could be on the complete opposite side of the field, and he's going to attract this attention that is unlike, I think, basically any other receiver in the National Football League. If you're looking at the odds-on favorites right now, if you're looking at Vegas for the MVP race, it's still Dak. He's the leader in the clubhouse as far as the odds-on favorite. Brock Purdy right after that, right behind him. Then Lamar Jackson at plus 475. Jalen Hurts at plus 650. Those are the top 4. Then you get into Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, who are tied at 16-1.
I would take either one of those players. I almost brought up Mahomes as an interesting. Brandon Zenner, who I work with, brought him up yesterday as an interest because their schedule gets soft. And let's say he went on a run over these games where he had like 15 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. At that point, he would end up with numbers that you could easily see as like MVP caliber based on what we've seen over the years. Like that's an interesting, long shot odds one.
I'm not touching
and so
that.
is Tyreek Hill.
Not touching
well,
that.
I wouldn't touch either one of them because Dak, as long as Dak doesn't fall on his face, the storyline of Dak is
Dak is the
insurmountable.
MVP. Like I just
right now he is. Their
Dak is
schedule
the
does
MVP.
get tough. Their schedule does get tough, and I think it's close. So what you've got, and this is where Tyreek Hill gets interesting, and Mahomes to some degree. MVP is very storyline driven. Otherwise, Rodgers wouldn't have won it over Brady the second time Rodgers won it. Brady had a better year. But it's very storyline driven. So you've got a great storyline with Dak, right? A guy everybody wanted to run out of town after he led the league in interceptions last year. Great storyline. You got a great storyline in Brock Purdy, right? Mr. Irrelevant, all those things, all the late round pick, the way that he's run this thing and has them as the best team. Easy storyline. Tyreek Hill, who has more receiving yards than anybody through 12 games in the history of the league and is this explosive game-wrecking player, probably like we've never seen. He's having a season, like if you stacked this season up against any other, I mean, Cooper Kupp had an incredible year recently. We know Calvin Johnson had the year where he has the record. Randy Moss had some seasons like that. This reminds me of the season Moss had with the Patriots that year, in that it's just like you don't get them very often. Tyreek Hill is having that kind of year. Great storyline. If Patrick Mahomes, if the Chiefs go on a run here and solve something, who knows? I don't think that's likely, but I'm saying if that were to happen, you got another great storyline there to potentially look at. I suppose Jalen Hurts. I think he's got the least storyline appeal to his candidacy. And I think Lamar Jackson is a decent storyline, but probably not quite as juicy as these others. I think there are a lot of, I don't think we know it. Dak's the leader in the clubhouse. Don't get me wrong. But man, with 4 games to go, this is a wide open race, and it hasn't been in a lot of years.
And in a year where you've got all of these quarterback issues and injuries and backup quarterbacks coming in, and then even a handful of quarterbacks that have not gotten injured, but they're not playing like we're used to seeing them play, like Patrick Mahomes and others. I mean, the options are kind of few and far between, right? Like it's Dak, it's Brock Purdy, it's probably Lamar. Like I would put Lamar over Jalen Hurts right now
Oh,
as
I would
my
too.
third.
I would too.
But I mean, really, as of right now, in my mind, it's a 2-horse race. It's Dak and it's Brock. And comparing those two guys, I mean, Dak has thrown for more touchdowns, fewer interceptions, but Brock has thrown for more yards. Dak has more yards on the ground than Brock Purdy does, but only by a little bit. They both have the same number of rushing touchdowns. Like it's very much kind of back and forth between the two of them as far as statistics are concerned. But when you're looking at the storyline, like you were talking about the narrative that plays into it, they both have really good stories, but I think Dak is right now just a little bit better.
So here's another name I think that's moderately interesting when we have this conversation. So Dak is, he's at 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and he's rushed for 185 yards. Here's another name, and I don't where if you've got the odds, pull it up, because what if Buffalo went on a run, right? And hear me out on this, because Buffalo it would give you the storyline appeal if they did it. They're interesting this year. So Josh Allen's right with Dak in yards. Now he has more interceptions, but he's very close to him.
That's going to be the issue.
But listen, if he went on a run where he was great and limits the interceptions. So over how many games does everybody have left? 4, right? Let's say he throws 3 more interceptions, but gets on a run where he's accountable for 15 more touchdowns over 4 games. That's rushing and passing. I think that's, and the yards continue because the rushing has been there for Allen. He's got 374 yards this year. He's got 10 rushing touchdowns. So
how many total interceptions right now? How many picks has he thrown? Is it 12, 13? 14. Okay. I really think that the only way that is legitimate is, number one, the Bills have to win out. And number 2, you said 3 more picks. I would say 0 more picks. I don't think he can throw another pick for the rest of the season to be considered an MVP.
But Dak's got 30 total touchdowns this year, I believe, right? It's less than that. Dak has 30. He's got
28 touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns.
30. So Josh Allen right now has 25 passing, but then he has 10 rushing. So he's ahead of him in touchdowns. And if he could put up something gaudy where he's responsible for like 50 touchdowns and 15, 16, 17 interceptions versus what Dak might have, which is, probably more like 40, 41. And how many interceptions does he have right now? 6. And let's say 10 with the rushing combined in. And if the Bills are able to do something magical over the stretch, what are his odds at? I'm not saying any of this is likely.
Josh Allen is right behind Tyreek and Patrick Mahomes. So Josh Allen is tied with Tua at 20-1.
That's interesting. That's interesting to me. And I don't think any of that's going to happen. They can't figure out what's going on with Steph Diggs. Like, don't get me wrong. But I would also make the argument.
That has to happen.
I know. They'd have to make the playoffs, number one. I do think that Josh Allen, within the context of that offense, is being asked right now to do more than he's ever had to, right? More is on his shoulders, right? You're not seeing Steph Diggs make these incredible plays lately, I think he's and that could be his own fault. Don't misunderstand that either. Like, it could be him not getting it to Steph Diggs, but we're just not seeing that. It does feel like he's laboring through like every week to try and have to put everything, which is why he's throwing interceptions. He's an interesting one too. I just think that like storyline's probably going to be involved. And right now, Dak has the best storyline if he continues. It's just that their schedule does get a whole lot harder here down the stretch. It does. And we've seen it, for a long time with the Cowboys. They do tend to fall flat on their face at times. And if they do any of that and he opens that door up at all, I would, rather than go to like maybe even Brock Purdy, but certainly rather than Jalen Hurts, I'd be looking at Tyreek Hill, then probably Josh Allen, then probably Patrick Mahomes. But back to Tyreek Hill, if there's a year where it's not a quarterback, I do think he has had that sort of impact for his team, which is one of the better teams in the league this year.
I would agree with you that there would be an opportunity for one of those players, whether it's Tyreek or Josh Allen or Mahomes, to overtake the lead for the MVP race if it was Dak and then them. But you've got Dak and Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
The odds of both of them falling flat on their face, and then, oh, by the way, Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts are right there too. The odds of one of those guys that are further behind overtaking all of those players, I think, is unlikely. If it was Dak and everybody else, okay, yeah, like the history says that the Cowboys sometimes will lay an egg, and and I would be on your side for that. I think it's unlikely that all of them fall on their faces in the last 4 weeks of the year.
It would have to be more about what those guys did, and the reason that I say it's on the table is because we've seen all three of those guys do it before, right? We've seen those kinds of runs for Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. We've seen it more often than we haven't seen it. And Tyreek Hill just needs to maintain it. If Tyreek Hill gets to 2,000 yards, he called his shot before the year and everybody laughed at him. By the way, I think that's absolutely why he returned in that game. He wants that number, which makes me think he's going to get that number. He's day-to-day with that ankle right now. I don't think anybody's keeping him from 2,000 yards. He's on pace for it, and he clearly, to me, wants it. I think he's getting it. Now you've got an easy benchmark to point back to. Oh, the Tyreek Hill 2,000-yard season. He's my favorite bet of the MVP candidates right now because I think it's the easiest to sell as in the Dolphins schedule gets a lot harder. So they can't fall flat, which we've seen them do in every big opportunity they've had this year. I think it's intriguing. I really think this year's MVP race is as interesting as one as I can remember.
Okay,
I mean, it was so obvious last year, right? It's just like this is an interesting wrinkle to the race.
Did Calvin Johnson in 2012, when he had almost 2,000 yards, did he win the MVP? No.
But the Lions were terrible that year, weren't they? I don't think they were any good. Let's look.
Okay, here's another example. In 2021, when Cooper Kupp almost had 2,000 yards, did he win the MVP?
Where was he in the MVP? Yeah, okay. By the way, the Lions that year were 4-12, so you can throw that one out. He would have never had a chance. Where was Cooper Kupp? What year was that?
2021. He did
2021.
Aaron Rodgers won that one.
MVP vote. Yeah, but let's see where Kupp finished in it. Because he didn't get there. Like he didn't quite get there. So I think he was third. He was third in the MVP voting that year. That was the year Tom Brady should have won it when Aaron Rodgers won it. As an aside, if you don't believe me on storyline, that year, Tom Brady had 1,200 more yards passing, 6 more touchdowns. He did throw more interceptions, but he was better than Aaron Rodgers that year. So it is storyline driven. Aaron Rodgers had the good storyline that year. I think that with Kupp, the fact that he was third, he didn't get to 2,000. So that benchmark, we know that's important. He also didn't call his shot before the year, and that was the Rams Super Bowl year, right?
Yeah.
So he had Stafford with a great storyline, sort of pulling away from him a little bit. He had Aaron Donald, and there's nothing else there for Tyreek Hill. I think, and you see it, like when Tyreek Hill leaves that game and Tua just looks like a total average quarterback. Tyreek Hill's impact on that team is so clear and obvious if he can get to the 2,000. Because I don't think either. Let me look at that also. Dak will have better numbers than Rodgers probably did that year. Probably. He may not have better numbers than Tom Brady had. Those guys had so few interceptions, though. And so does Dak this year.
Yeah.
I only worry about Dak because of his schedule. If Dak just maintains, it's his. He'll get it even if Tyreek Hill does get 2,000 yards.
So if the benchmark for Cooper Kupp was third in the MVP voting, and that was a Super Bowl year for the Rams, he finished just shy of 2,000 yards receiving. He had 16 touchdowns. Right now, Tyreek Hill has 12 touchdowns and just over 1,500 yards. If he can
catches
do
does Tyreek Hill have?
97, so he's averaging more than Cooper Kupp did. But if the benchmark is third in the MVP voting for Cooper Kupp in that year that he had in 2021, if Tyreek can get another 100 yards a game and a touchdown the last 4, then you're kind of right on the same pace as Cooper Kupp, and you're probably looking at a second or third place vote in the MVP.
If he gets the 2,000, none of this is relevant unless Dak opens the door. It's Dak's to lose, right? Fully.
I think it's
Dak's
most likely that Tyreek finishes second or third in the MVP voting.
Well, he'll do that anyway, unless he gets hurt. That's going to happen either way, because they'll want to, because there will be people that it's far more likely to me that he gets third than a third quarterback. Let me just pull Brock Purdy's numbers here real quick, if everybody has him as the second guy. So he's got 25 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Dak has 28 and 6. They have about the same number of yards. So I suppose I just don't know if Purdy could be the X factor here, because he is a good story also. If he gets up to how many did Rodgers had 37 touchdowns that year. So you'd need 3 touchdowns a game over his final 4. I don't think that's going to happen for Brock Purdy. I think it could for Dak, but it's probably not going to. I certainly don't think Brock Purdy's throwing 3 touchdowns a game in his final 4 games. So he's not even getting to the 37, which by today's standard in the NFL is, it's a good year, but it's not anywhere near some of the great years we've seen touchdown wise. If Tyreek, if Dak opens that door, because Dak has the storyline, Dak is the storyline. If he opens that door at all, and Tyreek gets over 15 plus touchdowns, if he gets over 2,000 yards, I do think that there's going to be chatter about his candidacy. Now, he's got the same problem. Well, he's got even bigger than the Cowboys. They could also not win enough games down the stretch. If they become all of a sudden pedestrian, then they've got to be really good. And Dak faces the same challenge. We know Purdy's going to be really good. His team at the end is going to be really good. Dak and Tyreek both have to, their teams have to finish strong against good schedules for any of this to matter.
I think it brings up a really good point, and something that just happened within the last 24 hours, and maybe we can talk about it in the next segment. Did you hear about Cam Newton? Cam Newton went viral, a video of his.
Why do we still care about?
Well, he labeled Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott as game managers. He said they're not difference makers, but they're game managers.
I don't totally disagree with him, but I think it's ridiculous that we say system quarterbacks or game managers are a bad thing. I'll tell you, I wish Patrick Mahomes was being more of a system quarterback right now, right? What is that? Let's take a break. We can get into that. I did not listen to Cam Newton. I need a little context. Was he negatively saying that, or was he just describing their game? Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. 869-1240. We can get into that. That label that he, puts at the forefront, because we hear it all the time. Usually it has a negative connotation, right? I think that's a little off base. 869-1240. We'll come back. More Sports Daily right after this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor alongside you. Let's start this segment with a giveaway. Let's do the big one. You just heard the commercial for it. Turnpike Troubadours with Trampled by Turtles, the Red Clay Strays, Intrust Bank Arena, May 3rd at 7 o'clock. But you can make your plans now because we're giving away a pair of tickets to see the Turnpike Troubadours. Fantastic band. Love those guys. Seen them multiple times before they blew up. Used to see them at a little dance hall back in Amarillo. They were great. 869-1240. First caller right now. IHOP hotline. Get in there. Chad will get us a winner as we dissect what Cam Newton had to say. Now, I'm seeing like the reaction to it, of course, is outrage. I can't believe Cam Newton would say that. What is he? Cam Newton is literally trying to create clicks for his podcast. Number one, like that's what he's trying to do. Of course, that's what he's trying to do. He has a podcast. Okay. So that's what he's trying to do. Great. I don't, it doesn't matter. I don't really care. I think the problem for me is, and I don't know, again, I'm not going to go listen to the entire stuff because I don't have time. So I see the same headline people are taking away from it. I don't know the context of what Cam Newton was saying. Was he saying this as a negative connotation, or was he saying this as those players? And again, he listed Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Tua, and Goff as game managers. Is he trying to say they're different than, say, Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen?
Yeah, I think so.
Because
think that's
if he is, he's right.
Yeah.
Like they are different kinds of quarterbacks. Those guys that he listed are far more likely to play within a context of an offense and manage a game plan than the off-script players like Mahomes and Allen and Lamar. Even though Lamar is a little less of that these days, is that a bad thing is what I don't know, because it's not a bad thing. Tom Brady was the greatest game manager of all time. He was also the greatest quarterback of all time. Troy Aikman's a Hall of Famer, game manager, right? Joe Montana, to some degree, game manager. Those guys happen to be some of the best we've ever seen do it. So for me, when I hear someone say, well, Brock Purdy's a game manager, of course he is. He manages the most efficient offense in the NFL with some of the greatest playmakers. That's exactly what Tua does.
Yeah, Cam Newton's quote was, I don't give a damn what you do. You don't have to score every time. You just don't have to throw a pick every time either. If we're going to really call a spade, a game manager is different than a game changer. That's true.
I agree.
That's true.
But I don't think it's a bad thing either. Like, again, it depends on what you have. But if you're San Francisco, you don't want a game changer.
Right.
You don't want anybody changing what you've got designed because you have Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. You have one of the most talented offenses in football. I would want Joe Burrow right now to be a game manager, which is, by the way, what he does.
And by the way,
that's what I would want.
The other thing about the Niners also that you neglected to mention, he's got probably the best offensive lineman to protect his blind side, and that's going to help him be a better game manager week in and week out. I think really where this comes into play is when we're evaluating players for a potential MVP. You know, and you're comparing touchdown numbers versus interception numbers. And, you know, the year where Patrick Mahomes threw 50 touchdowns and Peyton Manning did that and Aaron Rodgers had a bunch of touchdowns and whatever. And then we're comparing like, okay, well, Dak right now has 28. You know, Brock Purdy right now has 25. You know, and is Brock Purdy going to get to that number? Well, he probably won't, and he probably shouldn't in the context of the way that offense runs. I don't want Brock Purdy throwing for 50 touchdowns because you've got Christian McCaffrey, who's your running back and a defense, but you've got Christian McCaffrey who should get a lot of touchdowns also. You got to share that wealth as the game manager. So if you're comparing guys for the MVP race, it's a completely different class of quarterback. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other. It just means that it's different in what they're asked to be doing every single week.
Look, we brought up the 2020 NFL or the 2021 MVP race where Rodgers, despite not having as good a numbers, beat out Brady. I think Brady very much is a game manager. Manning very much a game manager. Rodgers very much an off-script, adjust mid-play, just like Mahomes is, just like peak Russell Wilson was. Like they're very different. Now, let me just as a quick aside, Mahomes can do both, right? Like he does a lot of off-script. He might have to do a lot of off script this year, but he can do both. I don't think it takes away one way or the other from the greatness of any of these quarterbacks. Calling Dak Prescott a game manager is like the greatest compliment you could ever give Dak Prescott, because when he's not a game manager, he's not that good. He doesn't you don't want him to be that. You want him to be a game manager. You want him to make those throws where they need to be made to give playmakers a chance to do their thing. This is Dak Prescott's greatest season to our eyes, right? And he's never been more of a game manager than he is this season.
I think one thing to keep in mind, and this may be a good litmus test for these quarterbacks, if you look at a quarterback and they are not, gosh, I don't know, the second clear-cut best player on the team or the first best player on the team or on the offense, then you're probably a game manager. Like, let's look at the Niners, for example. You've got Christian McCaffrey. You've got Deebo Samuel.
You're
maybe
talking
Brandon
about
Ayuk.
talented. You're talking about talented,
right. Yeah, talented.
not important,
right. Exactly. Talented.
but talented. Got it.
Look at the Lions and Jared Goff. Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably number one. Jahmyr Gibbs is maybe number two, or David Montgomery. And then Jared Goff is probably 3 or 4. And there's nothing wrong with that. But from a talent perspective, like you look at the Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes is clear-cut number one. He is the number one most talented player.
Josh Allen,
Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow might be number 2 behind Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
But if you're not clear-cut maybe the second best, then you're probably a game manager. The Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb is probably the number one, clear-cut talented player on that offense. So I think it's okay to have a game manager label. You just have to kind of rank them based on talent and where that quarterback lands.
But my issue is anytime that people want to take a backhanded dig at a quarterback, oh, it's just a system quarterback. And I'm like, guys, so what? That's what you want. Every coach on the planet would tell you, I would love for my quarterback to be a system quarterback.
The question becomes, when push comes to shove in a playoff game, or let's say the Super Bowl, and you're a system quarterback, and the system stops working and you have to go off script, do these quarterbacks have what it takes? That's been a big knock on Dak forever, right? When Dak goes off script, it doesn't work well. So let's say the Cowboys make it to the Super Bowl, and I don't know, let's just say they take on the Chiefs or the Ravens that both have pretty solid defenses, and the defense makes the Cowboys adjust in the Super Bowl. Can Dak pull that off when it matters most if you have to go off script? That's, I think, really where the game manager label kind of comes apart a little bit.
I think that you can over time. It just depends. Matt Stafford got one. And not that he's a game. He's not. He would not fit into the game manager category, I don't think. He would fit into the talent, arm talent category with Rodgers and Mahomes and some of these guys. But again, it's almost to the argument of the whole wins are not a quarterback stat. And while I don't wholly believe that, I do think there is some truth in it when you get into some of the Dan Marino. Maybe Justin Herbert's headed down that path. Phillip Rivers was on that path. Really great quarterbacks
my point
just,
is,
couldn't get it, get the Super Bowl for whatever reason.
We go back to Mahomes, and in the playoffs with Kansas City over the years, there have been multiple times where Patrick Mahomes has had to go off script to win a playoff game. Or, let's go back to the Super Bowl against the Niners and the play with Tyreek Hill that was off script and ended up saving the game for Kansas City. That was off script. That's what Patrick Mahomes does. Can Dak Prescott do that? Can Tua Tagovailoa do that? Can Brock Purdy do that? As game managers, can they go off script when they have no other choice but to? That's the big question, and I don't know if they can.
It's also unfair, in my opinion, to compare those players to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is from how many seasons are we in of Mahomes now?
6.
So from 2018 to 2023, this is the most impressive and greatest 6-year stretch we've ever seen, in my opinion, from any quarterback in what we've seen. So setting that as the benchmark is not fair. Like, imagine how crazy it is to think about being willing and to some degree able to say Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback that's ever played football, and he's only been doing it for 6 years. That's how good this 6-year stretch has been. Now, open the door a little bit further, and this year tells you no quarterback is immune to what's around him, right? Nobody is. So I think saying, well, we've seen Mahomes do it, and so he's the benchmark is totally unfair. Aaron Rodgers is also in the conversation for one of the greatest we've ever seen do it. He got one. He's had one Super Bowl. Brady is the gold standard, right? Brady is still the epitome of all of this, and he is 100% a game manager and a system quarterback. Now, the system is built around him, but a part of doing that too, and what made Brady and Peyton Manning some of the greatest, are the changes they make at the line, right? That's because they know the system, right? And they can maneuver through that system. I don't think Rodgers, who is probably, well, I don't think it's probably, I think Rodgers is a more gifted physically quarterback than Brady or Manning, but he's not as good at the in-game system managing, and that's why he doesn't have the Super Bowls. He's good at it. He's not as good as those guys. That's where those guys have their advantage, right? Cerebrally, they understand it. Now, Mahomes up to this point has had both, right? He's had both the ability to just make an absurd play physically and to be so in tune with Kelsey and Reed primarily, and Hill when he was there. But that's what's really held Mahomes back this year, right? Is that piece, that system piece isn't working for him. And it's his worst year that he's had as a quarterback.
Yeah.
So the not being a system quarterback is providing Mahomes his worst year as an NFL quarterback.
The great thing about the 4 players that Cam Newton mentioned as game managers is each one of them, they have a great, not even a good, but a great wide receiver to go off script with if they have to.
If they have to.
They don't want to, but if they have to, they can. Tua's got Tyreek. Goff has Amon-Ra St. Brown. Dak has CD, and Brock Purdy has Deebo Samuel. So
and
Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. Right? Like they've got the guys that, if necessary, that will help them out a lot. You look at Kansas City, and to your point, Mahomes has had to go off script. He doesn't have those weapons that those 4 guys have. So I would argue
he has an old tight end.
And I would argue that he has Kelsey, but I would argue that right now, and we've seen this throughout the regular season, right now, those 4 guys that Cam Newton has labeled game managers are in better situations with their weapons than what Patrick Mahomes is dealing with in his system right now.
There's no question that it is. But again, like, to call game manager, to put that in a negative connotation is ignoring what we're seeing with Patrick Mahomes this year. Like, you want both, right? And you obviously want both, a game manager and a physically gifted, just out of this world quarterback. I mean, what are there in the NFL right now? Are there maybe 2 of those guys? Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes? I mean, Josh Allen but Josh Allen's not nearly the game manager that Mahomes and Burrow are, at least from what we've seen over his career. But he's as good at the other part as anybody, right? Like, he's just his physical ability to go do wild and crazy things on a football field. He's as gifted as we've ever seen.
The other thing I'll mention,
so it takes both.
The other thing I'll mention real quick is that if Cam Newton meant that as a dig on those 4 guys, where's Cam Newton at right now? You're not on a roster, buddy. You're not even in the NFL anymore.
Cam Newton was, and maybe it is negative because he was absolutely not a game manager in any way, but he was a very physically gifted quarterback that, took his team to a Super Bowl. I typically kind of enjoy Cam Newton as a football personality. I'm not going to do this because I don't have time. I need the context of that full conversation to understand what he was trying to say, because I don't disagree with him all that much. There is a difference in those guys and some of the other guys, but those guys are more likely to win a Super Bowl right now. And again, I'm telling you, you ask any coach in the world, would you like your quarterback to be a game manager? They would all say yes. They come up with a game plan for a reason. They think it's going to help them win the most effectively. And so,
and 3 out of the 4 of them are in the conversation for the MVP race.
Exactly. And there's a reason why. It's because they're managing their systems perfectly.
We have to just adjust our expectations, I think, a little bit as far as an MVP, right? Like, is it about just the sheer number of touchdowns and number of interceptions and yardage? Or is it, solely how valuable they are to their team and their system? That's what an MVP is.
That's how Aaron Rodgers was able to win one, right? Over Tom Brady, who had way better numbers because the voters looked at it.
I don't care
if Dak looked at it and said, Brady's in a better system, he's going to have better numbers.
I don't care if
Rodgers
Dak
did is whatever.
I don't care if Dak or Brock have 15 fewer touchdowns than what Rodgers or Mahomes had in the past. I don't care if they're the best and most valuable player for their team. They should be the MVP. Bottom line.
Right. It'll depend. It depends more on how many interceptions do they throw. It depends on how their teams finish. And back to button this all up, I think it depends on what Tyreek Hill does. Because I do think statistically, he has a chance to create some benchmarks that are attractive as an MVP candidate. The obvious one is 2,000 yards, but I mean, is anybody going to count Tyreek Hill out on doing something like super crazy and going for 2,200 yards? Like he what he's done this year, it's wild. I mean, he has been out of this world.
Needing 700 or so more yards over the last 4 games. It's not out of the question.
150 apiece, maybe 600 would be on the table, but he's got it in him. I mean, because he's done it. Like he's having up through 12 games. He's having the best season we've ever seen. And there's 4 more to go. And the Dolphins may be playing from behind because their schedule gets tough. And they're going to have to win some of these games and not just totally fall flat. But I love it. What a fascinating year. And thanks Cam Newton for the fodder there, because I love that discussion for the reason that I think it's misguided most of the time. Glad we could get that off our chest. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We still have Wonka tickets to give away, so hang tight. We'll do that before the end of the show. More to come here on Sports Daily.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily. Jake Albracht, Tommy Castor. Glad to be here with you on this. What day is it? Wednesday. Having some fun. Congratulations.
It's Taylor Swift's birthday. How do you not know that?
I did not. Happy birthday, T Swizz. Hope you and Trav are enjoying the day. Did we get any word? Like, what did he drop for a present on that? I know there was a lot of pressure on that.
Yeah, all I know is that there was a rumor that he was planning some big elaborate birthday dinner for Taylor. I don't know where. I have no idea. Cheesecake Factory, maybe. Olive Garden.
Ooh, yeah.
Applebee's.
Yeah.
Chili's.
Man,
that's what I would do.
Eat minestrone and breadsticks. Whew, that's good stuff.
The never-ending pasta bowl. Count me in.
So when you do that with Taylor Swift, does she just like buy the Olive Garden so that you can have some privacy?
Probably.
Yeah. Well, you know, to each his own. Good for them. I really want Travis Kelce to be awesome, to just keep people quiet a little bit. This is having no impact on him as a football player, I don't think. It just like I don't want to say leave him alone because that's naive, but come on now. Like, this isn't impacting him as a football player. He's been fine. He's had a couple like fumbles that are uncharacteristic, but the Chiefs' woes are far from Travis Kelce's responsibility. Like, he's been really good in his age 34 season, in which tight ends typically are not.
Yeah, I've got no problem with it at all. It's been fun to watch this season. And you know what? I've heard fans that have said, man, like, this is the problem with the Chiefs this year, is this relationship. I don't know. I'm sorry. The penalties and the drops and the turnovers, that's probably really the issue. It's not the relationship that the tight end has. So, like, let's move on from that.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, we can have fun with it. Now, don't get me wrong. It is fun. It's a fun story. It's been a fun story. We've certainly enjoyed it. But I want Travis Kelce to keep playing football. By the way, I have seen some people wonder, based on what Mahomes said after the game, of like, oh my gosh, his legendary player, they'll play it as Hall of Fame. They took that play away from him. I've seen some people like a little concerned about retirement. I hadn't thought about that. I have not considered Travis Kelce not playing for like another 2-3 years at least at the level he's playing at. I know that tight ends can't typically play that long, but man, I just get like, from that guy, like, I don't know that he fits that mold of there's nobody that loves football more than him.
There's a lot of tight ends out there that have played a lot later in their careers. Look at Antonio Gates. Like, that guy was
not this effectively, though.
I get it. But like, the shelf life is still there. I think that there's still effectiveness for the next couple of years from Travis Kelce.
Yeah, the shelf life is still there, but like, you gotta, like, Gates was going after his age 34 season. Gates had 630, 548, 316, 333. Like, what I'm saying is, like, production usually, and Tony Gonzalez is the exception here, but production usually goes away about this time.
I don't think production will go away, because what other option do the Chiefs have? You know what I mean? Like,
not just that, but it hasn't, right? Like, what is his yardage this year? He's already at 896. He's probably going to get 1,000. Like, if you go and look at what he's done and compare it to literally the all-time greats, he's ahead of all of those guys. And if his decline begins at, 90 catches, it'll be more than that. It'll probably be 100 catches and 1,100, 1,200 yards and, 8 touchdowns. Those are still the best seasons tight ends ever have. Yeah. Like, it's crazy. No, I don't think he's retiring. I think he's just fine. And it sure seems like he and T-Swizz are enjoying this lifestyle that they're living right now. And you got to show off for your girl. Like, I don't get the impression Taylor Swift has watched a whole lot of football before this year. Now you got to show off a little bit here. If you're Travis Kelce trying to, land the biggest star in the world,
why do you think
show her your stuff?
Why do you think he lateraled it to Kadarius Toney?
Totally.
Right?
Why do you think they're all so mad?
It's showtime, baby.
I'm mad too that play didn't count, because it was awesome. 869-1240. Let's give it away. Last thing, Wonka tickets right now. Boulevard Theaters in Town West Square. Sneak peek tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. This is the new one featuring Timothée Chalamet you can get your hands on a pair of tickets right now. Chad will get us a winner. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on tap the rest of the day here on KFH.
The $5 Cravings Box is back at Taco Bell, and it's the real thing. We're talking a Chalupa Supreme, a cheesy, beefy 5-layer burrito, a crunchy taco, cinnamon twist, and a medium drink, all for just $5. That's a lot of food for not a lot of dollars. In other words, a wise business deal, like greeting clients with a firm handshake and a delicious 3-course meal, that's only $5. Order your $5 Cravings Box on the Taco Bell app today. At limited participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last. Contact local store for price and participation which vary. Drinks exclude freezes. Price excludes tax.
Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? And if you drive while you're high, law enforcement can definitely tell. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
This year, Staples wants everyone to have a happy Holla deal. That's right, Holla Deal. Staples Holla Deals are amazing savings on hot holiday tech. Great prices on laptops, game systems, earbuds, and more. And now at Staples, you can save up to $350 on select PCs. During Staples Holla Deals, it's not about the fa-la-la. It's about saving moo-la-la. Save up to $350 on select PCs today at Staples. Ends 12/23. In store only. See associate for details.
Drinking and driving will change your whole world. Whether you get pulled over or get into a crash, things will never be the same. Getting a sober ride will change your world for the better. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.
NASCAR Cup Series champion Ryan Blaney here. If you come in now, you get 12% off everything for the 12 days of Christmas at Menards.
That's right. We couldn't resist. In honor of number 12's big championship win, we're giving you 12% off everything for the 12 days of Christmas. Thank you, friends, for a great year.
Merry Christmas and enjoy your 12% off everything.
Savings are mail-in rebate. Some exclusions apply. Sorry, no price adjustments. See store for details.
I'm Bob Burke, founder and chairman of Burke America Parts Group, a family of brands that includes RepairClinic.com, an appliance and HVAC parts solution company that's grown into an international brand. Before AmericanEagle.com, we partially launched a new technology platform developed by another firm. American Eagle helped take our technology to a whole new level with digital marketing, software development, and business insights into our key markets, appliances, HVAC, and outdoor power equipment, and did so both on time and on budget. AmericanEagle.com has the resources, experience, and talent needed to produce solutions. Our new technology platform, developed by AmericanEagle.com, has produced tremendous results with higher traffic, conversion, engagement, and online revenue. If you have any home repairs you need to take care of, check us out at RepairClinic.com. If you need a world-class website or technology project, then I would highly recommend AmericanEagle.com.
Call AmericanEagle.com at 773-NETWORK. That's AmericanEagle.com, 773-NETWORK.
Join us at Odyssey as we all do our one thing. Together millions of things for our planet. This holiday season, invest in some LED Christmas lights. LEDs last years longer than regular lights, which means less electronic waste over time. Also, LED Christmas lights are far more energy efficient, wasting less energy as heat, which means a smaller electric bill. And be sure to recycle old Christmas lights at appropriate e-waste facilities. When we each share our one thing, it becomes 100 things, 1,000 things, 1,000,000 things for our planet. What's your one thing?
The KFH Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888. That's 888-8888.
College volleyball last night, the end of the season for Wichita State, the championship match of the NIVC postseason tournament. And the Shockers continued to dominate, and they finished the season with a tournament championship, winning the NIVC with a sweep on the road at UTEP, 3-0 in front of a sellout crowd of 3,300 people. The Shockers finished their season at 26-8, handing UTEP their only home loss of the entire season. They had been undefeated until last night. The Shockers ended up winning 15 sets in the tournament, only lost one. It was really dominant here down the stretch for Shocker volleyball, winning 9 out of 10 to finish the season, including the NIVC championship. Emerson Wilford with 11 kills and 3 block shots. Izzy Strand with 29 assists, Gabby Moss with 12 digs, and Natalie Foster with a 364 attack percentage. Shockers finish up the season, win the NIVC postseason tournament championship in volleyball. I'm Ted, the Sports Head.
Merry Christmas.
For some, the holidays are a time of relaxing with family and friends.
The best time of the year.
But for sports fans, the holidays are time for the biggest sports matchups. Bowl games. Touchdown! The NBA. Oh, what a play! The NHL. He's gone! And the end of the NFL season. We are sports.
97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio. 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us here. Been a fun day. Benny and Rob. Jad was feeling festive. Got a Santa hat on there. We gave away lots of stuff. We'll continue to do that this week. It'll be a lot of fun. Coming up on the network today, regular programming. Jim Rome at 11. Bob and Jeff locally here 2 to 4. Before Zach Gelb takes over things at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Lots of guests again. Tim Fitzgerald, Chelsea Messenger, our regulars, and Harlan Beverly of the Shockers will join us tomorrow as well. Looking forward to that. Thanks, everybody. For Tommy and Jad, I'm Jacob. We'll see you then.